What's going on, YouTube? When it comes to winning over the hearts of American families, Honda and Toyota are two of the brands that know how to do that best. In addition to popular family sedans and small crossovers, they also offer two of the most popular three-row family SUVs out there, the Honda Pilot and the Toyota Highlander. The former was just fully redesigned, and the latter fully refreshed this year, which means it's time for a rematch. So which of these Japanese family heavyweights reigns supreme? Let's go ahead and find out. Now, like always, let's quickly establish the pricing and trim levels right from the start. Beginning with the all-new Honda Pilot, we have the Elite trim, which is now the top model since there is no longer a black edition. After the destination charge, the total rings in at $53,375. Now, unfortunately, due to parts shortages, Toyota could only provide us with a limited Highlander instead of the fully loaded Platinum trim. That being said, there are hardly any differences, so we will point them out as we go along and grade the Highlander as a Platinum model. For reference, the Platinum all-wheel drive is slightly more affordable than the Pilot at $52,360. But let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of the video with the exteriors. While you probably won't notice the Highlander's extremely subtle styling updates this year, you will definitely notice the Pilot's changes. It marks a return to the boxier and more rugged design of the second generation Pilot, which a lot of people missed during the third generation's reign. The Toyota has a very different look, which is much more rounded. And as far as the headlights, it's rocking projector LEDs with adaptive bending. The top Pilot uses the same reflector LED headlights from the lower trim levels, and it doesn't have adaptive abilities. It does fight back by having LED turn signal indicators. Both of them have LED fog lamps as well. Moving to the side, the Pilot continues to have the more squared off look to it, and importantly, it's also significantly longer. That 5-inch advantage will certainly make a difference on the inside, so make sure you stick around and see that later on in the video. Their designs are punctuated by 20-inch alloy wheels, and then around back, we mostly have similarities as far as the actual features, if not the designs. Their wipers are exposed, and their brake lights are the only LED parts of their taillight units. Both can handle up to 5,000 pounds of towing, but only Pilot has faux dual exhaust tips. Now, checking out some of the individual features, both of their mirrors have heating, blind spot monitoring, power folding, and projector puddle lamps. The only difference is that only the Pilot has auto dimming. Now, safety is paramount, so in addition to BSM, both also include forward emergency braking with pedestrian detection, adaptive cruise control with stop and go, lane keeping assist, and auto high beam headlights. But being comfortable and having accommodations for the whole family inside the cabins is super important as well, so let's get into that. As we move towards the interior, there are some differences to discuss. Both have smart entry systems and remote start, although the Highlander's remote start system requires a subscription after the trial period is over. This class has been gradually getting more and more upscale, and both interiors look fairly premium as you pull open the doors. Now, starting with the seats themselves, both have 10 ways of power adjustment, heating, ventilation, and memory. They are also covered in real leather with ample perforations and stitching details. When it comes to overall material quality, there is an advantage once you've checked out all the details. The door trims are finished equally as nice, but the upper dash, middle dash, and especially the center console are done better in the Highlander. It uses more padded leather and faux wood trim instead of the mostly black plastic in the Pilot. After startup, you'll see digital gauge clusters on both, although the Highlander's is a couple inches larger. Both of them also have head-up displays, rain-sensing wipers, and heated leather-wrapped steering wheels. Another area of importance is interior storage, since these are family crossovers after all. Even though the Pilot's minivan armrests are gone this year, there is still an enormous amount of space. Both have large center consoles, ample bin space for cell phones, and even passenger storage shelves. Moving to the shifters, Toyota has stuck with a traditional one, and Honda with the same push-button style that the previous generation had. Pilot includes paddle shifters, and both have 360-degree camera systems when in reverse. Moving above, we have 3-zone automatic climate controls, both with easy-to-use physical knobs and buttons. And speaking of knobs, that now brings us to the volume knobs, so we'll go ahead and give the audio systems a sample. Speaker count and overall sound quality is very similar between the two, with more of an emphasis on bass than detail. Now it's time to take a look at the screens. For 2023, Toyota expanded availability of its Lexus-like 12.3-inch display, and totally redesigned the software inside it. The built-in navigation now takes up the entire display, and Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are both wireless. Honda's top display option is much smaller than Toyota's, at 9 inches, but it does still have built-in nav and wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Last but certainly not least for the front of the interiors, both models have auto-dimming rearview mirrors and single-panel panoramic sunroofs. Now heading around to the rear, this is perhaps just as important as the front, because if they don't do a good job, then you'll have 5 people complaining to you, and no one wants that. Thankfully, neither of these two will have that problem in the second rows, since both have over 40 inches of rear legroom. Technically, Highlander has a bit more, but less than the 5% difference needed to score a point. And as far as the features back here, they have an identical list of niceties to ward off those complaints. There are rear climate controls, vents, USB ports, household power outlets, sunshades, and the seats themselves are heated. But this is where the Pilot has a trick up its sleeve, borrowed from the Acura MDX. The center seat can fold down to make captain's chairs with a console, or it can be removed entirely to make a pass-through to the third row. This seat can be stored under the cargo floor and gives you either 7 or 8 passenger seating as needed. Let's head to the next row of seats. Remember that difference in size on the outside? Well, this is where it impacts the interior, because the Highlander's third row legroom substantially lags behind the Honda's, and headroom as well. Moving out back, both have hands-free power tailgates, and once they open up, space numbers are great in both. As a matter of fact, they are sized mostly equal, except for the Pilot having a 15% advantage behind the third row. That's probably due to the fact that it has a huge underfloor storage area. Speaking of that, both third rows are folded manually. That's it for the interiors, so now let's get them out on the street and see how they perform behind the wheel. Up until this year, under the hood, these two crossovers were quite similar. But for 2023, Toyota is changing things up. Technically, the Honda also gets an all-new engine, but it's still a 3.5-liter naturally aspirated V6, whereas the Toyota's new engine is a 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. This gives them very different feels when accelerating, with the Honda having more horsepower that you feel at higher RPMs, and the Toyota feeling very punchy off the line with 17% more torque. So Toyota, emphasized a lot about the torque figure, 317 pound-feet of torque. It's a big number, and you can really feel that. Definitely pushes you back in the seat, and we took off there pretty fast.
Oh yeah, this thing is quite quick. So it's producing 265 horsepower, which, yes, if you're keeping track of that, that is 30 less horsepower than the current Highlander V6 in the 2022 model. That said, the 310 pound-feet of torque is a 17% improvement in the amount of torque. So, in essence, what do you think, Drew, behind the wheel? We've driven the V6 Highlander many times. I think it equates to about the same acceleration.
Alright,
Very
so
nice.
There's a quick burst of acceleration here in the all-new Pilot. So, as we have stated previously, the most powerful Honda Pilot ever. Now, it's not by a ton. It's actually just by 5 horsepower, but nevertheless, it still does have that new 3.5-liter V6 engine, 285 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque. And, you know, guys, I think this is probably important to you, at least from the comments we see from you guys down below. It's got a V6 still.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of things
smooth
are going
and refined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of the competition is moving to 4-cylinder turbos, including probably the Pilot's biggest competitor, which I would say is the Toyota Highlander. As far as the rest of the powertrains, we have 8 and 10-speed automatic transmissions, respectively. And both have torque vectoring all-wheel drive systems with terrain selections. Now, another important aspect of the powertrain, of course, is the transmission. And I'm happy to say that Honda has made some big improvements in this area compared to the previous generation. As you might remember, we used to have a 9-speed ZF-sourced automatic transmission. That one had, you know, some issues with kind of shift quality, basically. Now we've got a 10-speed automatic transmission, and this is a Honda-developed transmission. Now, as far as some other things to talk about, we do have an 8-speed automatic transmission on board. That's going to continue this year. This has always been a pretty good transmission. It's nice and responsive is one of the biggest things that I always remember about it, because when you change your position, you get a new gear change pretty much immediately. I do want to mention that Toyota put a lot of effort into making the new Turbo 4 refined. And while it is very good for this kind of engine, it still doesn't match the silky smooth 3.5-liter V6 in the Pilot. Alright, so I just punched it down as we kind of head out into this highway stretch of road. And yeah, smooth and refined is definitely how I would describe this. Of course, you know, the previous V6 was also smooth and refined, but this new one, just as good, if not even better. And it really makes a nice raspy note as you accelerate as well. It just sounds strong and ready to rumble. Generally cruising, though, both seem very hushed from external noises. We took sound level readings while we were sampling them at press events, so unfortunately the reading in the Pilot was tainted by rough roads in Arizona. Nevertheless, these were the numbers we obtained until we can retest back in Kentucky.
And speaking of the noise level entering into the cabin, we want to do one of our Car Confections signature elements, which would be our sound level reading, so we can see how it compares to some of its rivals.
Let me make sure I'm going exactly 55 miles an hour. Now, do keep in mind, we are in Sedona, Arizona, so the road texture is not exactly the same as it would be in Kentucky, but we're going to go ahead and give this a try right now.
.6 is our official Car Confections reading. 56.5, it switched on me at the last second there. That's a very solid sound level reading.
Now, speaking of smooth and refined, that perfectly describes both vehicles' ride qualities. They absorb all but the largest road imperfections, while still maintaining decent body control and not feeling too floaty. That's one of the nice things about these two, that neither feels like you're driving a giant vehicle, while there's still enough room for the whole family.
But I do want to talk about your ride quality, because that, of course, is a big thing with the Honda Pilot. This is a family 3-row SUV. So how does it ride? Well, here in the Elite trim level, I am super happy with the ride quality. The seat's incredibly comfortable. We're about to go over a bridge. It just really soaks it up. This is a fantastic riding vehicle. Of course, this segment is known for being good riding, so it needs to have that characteristic, and the Pilot definitely does. Now, I do want to talk about your ride quality for this new Highlander, because obviously, or the refreshed Highlander, it is going to carry over this year. So you're going to have your signature Highlander ride quality, which has always been one of the best in the entire segment. This does a phenomenal job of just soaking up the bumps, being very comfortable, which is exactly what anything in this segment of vehicle is meant to do. It's meant to be comfortable, to haul all 3 rows of people in opulence, and this Highlander does a phenomenal job. It really does feel like a Toyota Lexus.
And lastly, for fuel economy, the switch to 4-cylinder pays off for the Toyota, with a 3 mpg combined advantage. Furthermore, Highlander is available in a hybrid form, which is something the Honda doesn't offer. That option is available with nearly every trim of the Highlander and pushes fuel economy all the way up to a remarkable 36 mpg combined. And one final thing, we have to revisit the price difference and evaluate value. There is a $1,015 price gap between the two, which is good for an additional half point added to the Highlander. And that's the end of this hard-fought comparison. These two perennial family favorites really kept it neck and neck the entire way through. But now it's your all's turn to let us know what you think in the comments below. Which of these reliable family choices would be the one you'd put in your driveway? Anyway, thanks for joining us for this Car Confections comparison, and we'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. That helps us continue to make more comparisons, full reviews, auto show coverage, and more for you guys to see the latest and greatest cars. Also consider following us on TikTok and Instagram if you enjoy shorter form content. And we'll catch you later as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.